Good afternoon, everyone. This is Amy Dacey. I'm the Executive Director of the Stein Institute of Policy and Politics at American University, but I'm also a proud board member of the USMexico Foundation and a former board member of the American Council of Young Political Leaders. We are so excited to have you join us today for this town hall, the first part of ACYPL's Good Neighbors Week, where we are exploring the bilateral relationships with neighbors Mexico and Canada. ACYPL engaged with Mexico at the end of 2018 and forming a new partnership with the US-Mexico Foundation, and will hopefully be sending a delegation of Americas to Canada for the first time in 30 years in 2021. I was a proud member of that inaugural trip. I learned a great deal, and I also learned the importance of this relationship, and we are so excited today to have this conversation. I want to first and foremost introduce you to our expert panelists who agreed to join us today. First, Raul Alvillar. He's a political consultant, a strategist, a commentator. He most recently served as New Mexico State Director for the Biden for President campaign. I know him well as a former colleague, as the National Political Director at the Democratic National Committee, where he was instrumental in preparing the election for the 2016 general election. But he has also served in the administration. He was formerly a senior advisor to Secretary Sean Donovan in the Office of Public Engagement and Public Affairs at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and also served as the Associate Director of the White House's Office of Public Engagement. Raul also attended the University of New Mexico and can be frequently seen as a guest commentator on Fox News, CNN, and CNN en Español. He has traveled on ACYPL's exchange to Mexico in 2019, so also had that firsthand experience. And we are incredibly honored to have him joined today by the Honorable Gerónimo Gutiérrez. Thank you so much for coming, Ambassador. Ambassador Gutierrez served as is currently a senior advisor at Covington and Burlington LLP, where he provides strategic advice to businesses and governments on political risk. He's also a managing partner at BEEL Infrastructure, a specialized advisory and assessment management firm. But he also has had many previous means of service and lends his expertise today as managing director of the North American Development Bank, as Deputy Secretary for Governance and Homeland Security, and as a member of the National Security Council's Executive Committee in the Foreign Ministry, Undersecretary of Latin America and the Caribbean, and Undersecretary for North America. And also, has with the United States and Canada served and coordinated day-to-day trilateral and bilateral affairs. He has served on the board of directors of the United States Mexico Business Association and as an advisory board of the Woodrow Wilson Center for Mexico Institute. Certainly I could go on and on and on and on for your experience, Ambassador, but we're so glad to have you join us today.
Thank you.
We want to thank both of you for joining us in this really important conversation. What we thought we'd start with first is to make sure that we just get kind of your perceptions about what is happening currently. We just finished up a national election here in the United States. We're going through a transition to a new administration and to start of a new year, and ending a very challenging year that we saw in 2020. So Ambassador, why don't we start with you, just some general reflections on the year that's passed and the year ahead.
Well, it's certainly 2020 has been anything but boring in the bilateral relationship, and I expect that 2021 will be pretty much the same thing. If I have to summarize what has happened or where the relationship is between Mexico and the United States, Amy, I would say that first, USMCA, the United States Mexico-Canada agreement, is now our reality. The agreement was able to get ample bipartisan support here in the United States. And it also has a lot of support in Mexico, multi-party support. And I think that this agreement constitutes a certainty in a sea of economic uncertainty for Mexico, for the United States, for Canada, and certainly even for the world, I would say. It's an important agreement in terms of our trade and investment relationships. And I think it also provides us, the three countries, I think having now the agreement, the USMCA in place, I think it now provides a great opportunity to sort of retake the North American agenda between the partners, between the three countries. And I think this is especially so given everything that is going on in the restructuring of world supply chains, and also given what we could expect or at least imagine can be the post-COVID world. So I think that this agreement is a base from which we can continue to build a competitive North American region and strengthen our ties between Mexico and the United States, and obviously also Canada. And I would say it's far from perfect. It's not a perfect agreement, but I think it does the job. And again, I think it is an opportunity for the three countries. And I'm glad to see. Again, I emphasize that given the fact that it had bipartisan support in the states, and President Lopez Obrador very much considers it as a part, a centerpiece of his economic policy. I think in that regard, we're in good shape. And we had just, past years, we have 3 years of tough negotiations, and NAFTA was actually at some point in time at risk. And I think that I'm glad to sort of say that, it's not a perfect scenario in terms of our trade and investment relations, but we look good and we have an opportunity with this agreement. The second thing I think I would mention is that the past few years, we've barely touched upon the migration agenda from a bilateral perspective. Obviously, we were unfortunately very much occupied with either the wall or the other enforcement measures that were difficult and tough. And I would just say that Mexico and the United States can simply not be satisfied with the status quo in terms of how we handle immigration bilaterally and regionally. And I think that's going to be a topic that will be very much front and center as soon as the Biden administration comes in. And again, I think we will have to approach it. There's a bunch of things that need to be discussed and hopefully work together on in a bilateral basis, and also in a regional perspective, as we know that an important flow of Central American nationals actually go through Mexico into the United States, and we can certainly talk more about that. But that's another area that it's been handled. It's been relatively functional with a lot of political tension here, a lot of political tension in the States, but we certainly need to improve what we're doing. And then finally, I think that the Merida Initiative was pretty much the backbone of our security and law enforcement cooperation between 2007, 8, all the way up to 2018. The AMLO administration signaled early on that it wanted to review that basic framework for our security cooperation, but that basic program, which is perfectly fine, but nothing has yet substituted. And I think it's, we still have a lot of I emphasize, challenges in tackling international organized crime. And therefore, I think it's going to be important that we work on that area, and we find something that substitutes what has been the backbone of security cooperation. But I'll stop there, not before thanking, obviously, for the opportunity to be with the American Council of Young Political Leaders. Obviously, with Raul Alvillar, it's a pleasure to join you. And Amy, it's always good to see you, and thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you again for your time. That's a great way to put in context where we've come from and what we're looking for ahead. Raul, I've known you a long time. You've been in politics a long time, both in government and outside of government. What's your perspective of where we are right now?
Yeah, no, and thank you, Amy, for having me here on this panel. Thank you to the Ambassador Gutierrez, ACYPL, for having me as well. To get to your question, I mean, as you know, the ambassador was highlighting a number of good policy issues that the countries could work on bilaterally. And as we say in politics, good policy makes good politics, right? So I think what we can see here is an opportunity for both countries, not only Mexico, but as the ambassador was referencing as well, as Canada as well, to make sure that we have good laws that are going to be good for migration and immigration. I think that's something that we're going to see, with this administration and with AMLO's administration, and see how we can make this a better process and how we can benefit each other. Because, in my opinion, this is a opportunity for us to make sure that trade is also going to be even flow through all countries, and we are so interdependent on each other. And I got to see this firsthand when I went to Mexico in 2019 with ACYPL, the importance of what that is and how that looks. And so I think there's a couple of hiccups that we have to get through here at the initial beginning, as we start this transition with this administration. I think it'll also be a good opportunity for us to fix what some of the problems are down at the border, at the wall, with these individuals that are still haven't found their parents, and so on and so forth. So I think that's going to be a big piece as well. But I think there's a lot better opportunity. I think there's going to be a lot of conversations between all parties involved. And I only see good things coming from this administration moving forward, and we have to, because we have so many of our states that border the great country of Mexico. So not only do they affect our borders and those countries, but not only they affect other areas as well, or in other states for that matter, like up in Iowa or Ohio or any of those states. And those are also, in the political realm, those are important states to the United States.
Thank you so much. It's interesting, Raul, you mentioned this conversation and an opening of conversation, but Ambassador, you brought up Mexican President Obrador, who is yet to acknowledge Biden's status as president-elect, while every other Central American leader has done so. What is the risk to Mexico in the bilateral relationship the longer this goes on? Is this a concern of yours? Is this just something that we'll move on from? Or why, when we've seen a lot of global leaders weigh in, what's happening with Mexico?
Well, I think that President López Obrador, has made public his decision and the reasons behind it. In what he has framed this as a sort of a non-intervention issue, being careful not to, say something ahead of the own institutions of the United States. That's his explanation. I don't share that view. I think that congratulations to the Biden Harris formula is long overdue. It's been like that for a good number of weeks, I would say. I think that it's unfortunate. I would describe it as unfortunate. I think it's a missed opportunity. I think that it's going to be difficult for I think perhaps for the presidents to actually take that that early contact as an opportunity to build some rapport, and that I found it difficult that it will change. I also think that Vice President Biden has seen a lot in his 40 years plus of career. All sorts of things. He's been deeply involved in foreign policy in many occasions. I don't think he's gonna take this especially personally. I think he's he understands the importance of the relationship, and I think that both sides actually want to have a very fluid and functional and positive relationship. I would worry a little bit more. In my view, and what I've learned is that at second and third levels among the Democrats, some members on Congress, some Democrats in the Congress, and certainly people at the Biden team are disappointed with this. And I think that there's going to have to be some work there needed to regenerate that trust and that relationship. I don't think it'll be hugely critical in the sense that I don't expect that there will be any reprisal. I just think it's a great missed opportunity. That's what I would describe it. And hopefully, as soon as contacts begin to take place, we will be able to straighten this out. And there are a lot of things to tackle in the bilateral relationship. And I hope that we can get to that as soon as possible.
So you don't have concerns after the inauguration moving forward going into 2021?
I don't have I would
conversation.
emphasize, I don't think it's a huge, and I don't think that there will be a reprisal. And again, because of that, I hope I'm not mistaken. I think that, that the embassy and the president had explained a reason. I just don't share it. And I think that many people here don't understand that. I don't think I don't think that Mr. Lopez Obrador does not want to have a positive relationship with the Biden administration. I don't think that's the case. I think he has made a bad judgment call in terms of foreign policy, and there's going to be some price to pay for that. Yes, I think so. I think it'll be naive to expect that nothing's going to happen. But I trust that, again, the Biden team understands the importance of the relationship and will sort of keep the high moral ground on this one again.
Yes, well, we shall see as this progresses along. Raul, first of all, congratulations to you. You led the Biden campaign in New Mexico, won that state, as a part of the national election in 2020. But you've also certainly worked on campaigns all across the country as national political director for the DNC. Sometimes we have a tendency to say this is a relationship border states should care about the most. But as you mentioned briefly before, why should Americans outside of these border states pay attention to this relationship with New Mexico? If you're in the Rust Belt, if you're in New England,
right.
Why should this matter to you?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, this is a global economy. This is a relationship that is intertwined and intermingled. I'll give you an example of why it matters. As we all remember, a couple of years ago, Trump threatened to impose tariffs on Mexico and bringing in imports from Mexico. The minute that happened, there were a number of big auto companies that were like, whoa, hold on, wait a minute, this cannot happen. Because what will happen immediately, we can't bring the products that we need to build our automobiles and our cars. You mentioned the Rust Belt. So those are jobs in Ohio. Those are jobs in, Wisconsin. Those are manufacturing jobs that we as individuals here in the United States care about. So that's the reason why most people should care about this, because it not only affects, the border states, as you mentioned, but it also affects, places like Mississippi, where they're harvesting and bringing in shrimp from the Gulf, and they have nobody there to work and to manufacture and process these types of products. And so it's just going to sit there. So it's basic economy and the basic economics. And the other thing is like, Hispanics, Latinos are everywhere. We're one of the largest populations in the United States. We're a contributing factor to the economy. We're a contributing factor to a number of different things. So you have to think about what happens if we don't have good relationships, we don't have good trade relations, and so on and so forth. So it's all intertwined. We're all dependent on one another.
Right. Let me just add to that, Ambassador. Do you think it's equally important if you're a congressperson, from Minnesota, that you care about this relationship as somebody who's in Texas as well? I mean, certainly with your experience, that's important that all parts of the country are better educated about the importance of this relationship.
I think it's very important. People don't often realize, neither in Mexico and the United States, how intertwined or interdependent we are. And actually, some people might not even like that is the fact. But on a daily basis, the average Mexican, I would say that has some sort of contact with what is going on with the United States, and probably vice versa. And I think that it's important to, inform and educate as much as possible what's at stake in the relationship between Mexico and the United States. To my knowledge, there are over, I think 33 states that have Mexico as their number one trading partner. And that certainly includes states like Texas and California, which are obviously border states. And, the border states, along with Arizona and New Mexico, obviously have a, they have extremely important relationship with Mexico. But it's not only the border states. If the whole Midwest depends, largely on, Mexico's consuming a lot of agricultural products. We are, I'm not sure if the first, but certainly a top buyer of agricultural products. So states like Missouri or Kansas, the Dakotas, and, are very much touched by the fact that Mexico buy a lot of what it's produced there. And every and I can go on, and you will see that from a trade perspective, there's just there's some estimates that would point that over 5 million jobs in the U.S. depend on trade with Mexico. Last year, we were the number one trading partner. So and moreover, a lot of Americans are constantly visiting Mexico. I think it's probably the top, destiny, and vice versa. Right. And, there's just simply so much linkages. And we're never, this relationship is never going to be perfect. Neighbors, usually neighbors, you might have differences. But unless something extraordinary happens, and there is a saying in public policy, in foreign policy, I'm sorry, that geography is destiny. Yes. Unless something extraordinary happens, we're going to continue to be neighbors for a while. And I think it's important we understand as much as possible, and not only among the people that have, a specific relationship with Mexico, like it might be, or it is in many cases on the border states, but throughout Mexico and throughout the United States. So yes, it's important, and that is why these type of town hall is, I think, extremely useful.
Yes, I think, and to share, thank you for sharing that information. Who realized so many states are dependent in a lot of ways on this relationship. And I will say, just personally, I know, Raul, I'm sure you'd feel the same way. The delegation trip I took to Mexico City helped me understand that, meeting with not only, but, public officials and certainly people in government, but business leaders, community leaders, to get that sense. I think it's one of the best things.
You know what, Amy, if I may, sorry for interjecting, but you know what, it's important is that, people like myself, usually go out and give this, speeches or talks with a lot of data, and Mexico is the number one trading partner, and we trade, which is true, more than 1.5 billion every day go on goods and services through our border, millions of jobs on both sides, and we go. But it's the stories that count, and it's the stories that touch people, and we need to write and document, write, and share those stories, because there might be someone in Idaho or someone in Ohio that is not, is not directly, on a daily basis linked to what is going on in Mexico. But if you go deep, you'll see that there's a story probably in his community about why Mexico can be important, and obviously vice versa. Right. The same happens in Mexico, absolutely. Right?
Yeah. No, and Raul, did you experience that as well? I know we went in different years, but it was a similar program.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was, I've been to Mexico. I have an affinity for Mexico. I love Mexico, and have gone several times to Mexico City and to different cities around the country. But, I still didn't kind of grasp it, until you actually, like you said, you meet with these folks. And I think, when we were there at the time, the big top hot issue was the import-export of tomatoes. And the ambassador mentioned that somebody in Idaho doesn't realize that if this isn't happening, if we don't get the tomatoes, you're going to have to start paying $4 a pound for your tomatoes, because there's not any, and vice versa. So it was extremely eye-opening, and it was something that I will always carry with me, and always be able to the ambassador's point, tell those stories
Yes.
not only of folks from Mexico, but tell our stories about what we're trying to do and how we view our relationships from the United States and to Mexico and vice versa. So it was one of the best experiences I've ever had, and I'm forever grateful to be on that trip.
Yes, and hopefully next year we'll have the opportunity to have more, delegations going back and forth.
Absolutely.
Obviously incredibly important. The both of you have mentioned migration and trade several times. These are certainly the most important issues for the US-Mexico relations. But to put that face, are there other areas you believe that should be given some attention? Maybe we'll start with you, Ambassador, just issues that certainly you worked on. I mean, I think they certainly are the ones that we hear about the most, certainly are at the crux of the relationship, but are there other things to consider as we're building this relationship?
I think there's no end to the sort of things that go on in the relationship between Mexico and the United States, but I would highlight some that I think are not that known and are important. One is, for example, looking at our border, our ports of entry. Every single day, as I mentioned, thousands of containers and people go legally through our borders, legally. And it is very important for competitiveness reason and for security reason to have modern, up-to-date infrastructure that would allow people and trucks and to go through safely, securely, and rapidly, because that implies literally billions of dollars in terms of our competitiveness. That's an area that we need to work on. And a lot has been done over the years. But if we are going to continue to do trade, which I think we will, and if our trade continues to grow, we'll need better and more infrastructure at the border. Similarly, we can work on water. We just recently reached an agreement on water. We share two important river basins, the Rio Colorado and also the Rio Grande or the Rio Bravo. And we've managed to administer those basins jointly for over, since 1944 in a very successful way. But we need to, water is a big issue to the future, and we need to work on that together. We need to have better water infrastructure, and we need to also look at underneath deposits of, underground deposits of water. That's an area. And I would say that in general, an area that doesn't often get too much attention, two more very briefly. One is education. I think that, you both participated in a visit to Mexico, sort of an educational program, even if it was an executive and short visit. But it's, the best thing that we can do, Amy, going to your initial comment, is teach young people about what the relationship is about. And that has to do a lot with education, having US kids, studying in Mexico and vice versa. And that's an area that I think deserves a lot of attention.
I think that's important because, what we've seen truly with some of the information, whether it's the entertainment industry or music industry, there's certain perceptions that are put out there. So I think the constant education about, what the relationship means and what more there is important to add. So I appreciate you emphasizing that. Just a reminder to everybody, please submit your questions. I could certainly ask questions of these incredible gentlemen all day long, but we want to know what you want to hear from them as well. Raul, let me ask you this. You've served in administration, and do you believe that President-elect Biden's administration is going to prioritize rebuilding relationships with our neighbors or focus on forging new ones? I mean, how do you believe diplomacy will change in a Biden administration from what you've seen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, yes, absolutely. I think it's, we talked a little bit about the recognition of the president-elect by AMLO. So I think that would be like a hiccup, as I said earlier, in the road. But I don't think, to the ambassador's point earlier, I don't think it's going to be a major issue. We'll get over that. We'll move forward. I think that, I think there will be more of a two-way conversation as opposed to a one-directional conversation. And I think that, the people that will be instituted and put into, whether it's the State Department or whoever the ambassador is from the US to Mexico, will be someone that understands those types of relationships and understands foreign diplomacy in a way that we haven't seen in the last 4 years. And I think that that's only good for all parties involved, both our countries, and as I said, not only us, but Canada is involved in this too. So I think it's gonna be like night and day, basically, in my opinion. And as far as I know, folks are looking forward to reopening these conversations and figuring out how do we solve these big important problems that we're faced with. Right. You asked a question earlier, what are some of the issues that are going to be important to this? And the ambassador touched on this a little bit when he mentioned water. I got to tell you, I'm from New Mexico, and the Rio Grande is not a Rio Grande anymore. There's like no water in there. That's an important issue, not only to Mexico, but to the United States and New Mexicans as a fellow New Mexican. But I think, the environment and what that looks like and how we're going to work together to make sure that we're not polluting the air, that we're not polluting the water, that we're making sure that, I forget the name of the salamander that's protected there in Mexico City and in the Teotihuacan. But those are important things. And I think those are, it's important to put people into positions that understand the policy and the brevity of it. And that's what I think is going to happen with this administration. I think they're going to be people who care about these issues. They're going to be people who care about the relationship. They're going to be people who care about Mexico. They're going to be people who care about the United States. And I just think that we're in for hopefully a really good relationship as we move forward, because we have to.
Right. Well, Raul, you touched on this, certainly about how the Biden administration is setting up. Ambassador, they've said that, Vice President-elect Biden is being very methodical about this. He's certainly a loyalist. He's bringing people back that have had experience or served the public in various ways, whether in the Obama administration or in different ways. How well known among the Mexican leadership are members of the President-elect Biden's administration that he has named thus far? And what is the viewpoint from Mexico on working with individuals like Biden's proposed Secretary of State, Tony Blinken? Are they known entities? Is there a comfort in seeing some people come back to work with them?
Well, first of all, I would start by saying that Vice President Biden is well known, obviously, in Mexico because he has visited several times. Yeah. He understands, I think, Mexico. He's worked with Mexico. He actually had the high-level economic dialogue during the Obama administration, which was sort of the centerpiece of our economic relationship. And I may be mistaken, but I think that took him on several trips to Mexico. So I will start by saying, that people know who he is. And then certainly the rest of the team is known. There are some names that are formally people that are working or receiving the agencies, like Ambassador Roberta Jacobson, and I don't know whether she'll have a position in the administration or not. Secretary Blinken. Oh, I think those there are people that are known. They have a prior reputation. Obviously, and I think that there's again, I think people are very much looking forward to working with them. And in spite of differences, I would say that there is an interest on the part of, I'm sure, of the López Obrador administration to work closely and as closely and as efficiently and as possible with the Biden administration. And the names that are there, it's obviously, they need to go through Senate confirmation, several of them, so I won't speculate too much. Yeah. But they're known, and we hope that, whoever ends up being in those positions will work with us.
Excellent, excellent. You both touched on, when we talk about some of the issues beyond migration and trade, we talked a little bit about water, some of the other issues. What do you both think? And I know, Raul, for us, it's a little personal having worked for Secretary Kerry before, but having a climate person named specifically in this new role that is a part that, is a part of certainly the national security team doing this, does this send a big indicator to also countries like Mexico about the importance of this climate dialogue? And, is this one of the issues that we really need to see people coming together? And is this a good signal, having this set up? Raul, I don't know, maybe we'll start with you, just because, we've both worked for the man and know his passion on this issue.
100%, absolutely. No, I think that's it's an important issue. It's an issue that we have to look at. It's an issue we can't deny. I think it also, someone like Secretary Kerry in this position does send a huge message, not just to Mexico, but to the entire world. And I think it shows to the point that how we're going to have to get back into the Paris Accords and so on and so forth. So I think it's an important piece. It will help probably shape some of the climate legislation and issues that the administration will look at, but not only at the administration, but I think within the House and the Senate as well. And then, I think within the USCMA, that was a big piece of it. And how does that look, and how do we be good neighbors and good partners? Again, to my point earlier, making sure that we're not polluting each other's areas. And I think we can work together and make sure that that's an issue that is at the forefront, which I think it will be.
Ambassador, do you have anything to add just about this newly created position and the importance of this issue for this relationship?
I love it. No, hey, listen, I think that, climate change is an important issue for the world. I think that having a special envoy, which is, with such credential, it's really a treat, and it's a good decision. I think that Mexico and the US, at least until recently, had a very robust agenda in terms of addressing issues, environmental issues, including climate change, and working on renewables and, energy efficiency, and sort of the things that, in my view, everybody in the world should be thinking about. And I do think that this is an area where, based upon some of the policies that have been followed lately by the AMLO administration, we might find us at different ends of the debate. And I hope that having John Kerry there and other people in the Biden administration, and having this issue so high up in the agenda, will help, regain some of that cooperation at least. So I'm hopeful, and I think I've worked at the North American Development Bank for almost 7 years, and which is the only. It was the first green bank ever created in the world, and people don't realize that. More than 25 years ago, when this issue was not such a hot button. And it was precisely created by Mexico and the United States to have and to cooperate on environmental issues in our joint border. And I think it's a perfect example of what we can accomplish together. It's been successful, and so I'm looking forward to that agenda.
Great. Well, we do have a question from our audience. This is geared toward you, Ambassador. It's from Axel, I guess is the individual's name. What's your take on yesterday's reform proposal that would oblige foreign agents, DEA, CIA, et cetera, to report their work and findings directly to the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
I haven't looked at the bill. I know it has been presented, and I saw Senator, I think it was introduced in the Mexican Senate, and I saw Senator Monreal, if I'm not mistaken, talk a little bit and make a brief summary. And let's not kid ourselves. This is largely a reaction to what happened recently with the arrest of General Cienfuegos and all of the shockwaves that specific case has sent. So let me tell you what I said, Amy, publicly. I said that it's well managed. That we should put attention into how that particular bill evolves and it's handled, because if it's well managed, it can be very positive, and if it's not managed appropriately, it can harm our cooperation, and I think that will be terrible. There are actually rules right now that already establish that agents, law enforcement agents from the United States or anywhere in the world that are in Mexico territory have to work under certain rules, and that's just perfectly normal. And it is not focused only on the United States. Is if any agency, organized crime, international organized crimes needs an international organized response, and therefore we need to have those sort of presence. I'm in favor of it. I've always been, and I think having certain rules is appropriate. But we have to be very careful, because that there is very sensitive information. I've worked on those matters for a long time. I've handled those. I can say that I was directly involved in negotiations, with the DA, and I have no quarrel in saying about the number of agents, and I'm glad that we increased them, and it's something that I support. So I don't think the rules per se are a problem. I think we just need to be careful, and more importantly, is that what happened in this case calls for more cooperation, not less, and to some extent for more transparent, even if it's compartmentalized appropriately, cooperation and information, not less. And I think that that's the way it should be seen. The case still needs to follow, its legal, process, but irrespective of that, we meaning the United States and Mexico cannot be successful in tackling halfway decently organized crime if we don't work together. And that certainly involves having this type of cooperation and agents. Let me tell you something. I wish we had also agents in the United States that would work side by side by people in the United States. Like and we learn what is going on. This is a market. We learn what is going on in the whole market. That will be my preference.
Okay. Well, this obviously will be an evolving question, as this was just recently the proposal came through. I have to say, all eyes again are still in the United States in a lot of respects. We're waiting for these Senate races, to evolve, and a decision about who's going to control the Senate. We, are about to swear in January our new House of Representatives. How do you see this new Congress working with the Biden administration? I mean, obviously, this is not just about what the administration wants to do. This is about, a partnership with the Congress too. And so what has to happen for some of these huge issues with our neighbor to move forward from a congressional perspective?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think we have a little bit of an easier, more of an opportunity with the House moving forward and getting some of these issues addressed that we need to address from both sides. And I think, with the leadership that we have there, I think that's not gonna be an issue. Now, this, as you mentioned, the Senate is a little bit of a up in the air right now until we have those two elections come in Georgia, with the Ossoff race and the Warnock race. So we're kind of a little bit of in a holding pattern right now. But the one thing that I will say is that I think will be helpful to us is that we have to remember that the president-elect rather, is from the Senate, and so he has a number of relationships there that he's had over the years. So I think that will be very, very helpful to.
Those are vice president-elect as well, correct? Right. So we both got these two incredible leaders who have these relationships. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So there is some hope there. And then at the end of the day, I think we have to move in a way that is going to be beneficial to all countries involved. And if we're looking at here in the United States, how is it going to affect, again, the economy? How is it going to affect our workers? How is it going to there's a number of different things that will be looked at and that will factor into how this moves forward. But I think, if we don't prove to be fruitful with these two Senate races from Georgia, then we're going to have to see how that's going to look for the first 2 years until we get to the midterms. And then that'll give us an opportunity to see what happens and how everything is starting to evolve, whether it's because of the migration issues or whatever they might be along the border. Is going to be a piece of that. So again, I'm hopeful with the relationships there. And again, back to I think they're going to put in people in the White House and that will be in charge of taking care of the relationships for the White House from the Senate and from the House. And so I think those people, they've already started to kind of implement those types of folks with, former Congressman Cedric Richmond, who's now heading up the governmental affairs office. So those kinds of things are good. And as you know, Amy, better than anybody here, and the ambassador as well, is politics is all about relationships, and it's about local. And so if you have those relationships, then it'll make it a little bit easier for when we come and tell those stories that the ambassador was touching on to these members of Congress and to their constituents, and have their constituents talk to them. It'll make our jobs a little bit easier. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in Georgia, and I'm hoping that we're successful, and we put a lot of weight on Stacey Abrams, but but I think if you're
well,
Georgia,
it is interesting that the election's over, but there's not part of it isn't, and we're waiting to see. We got another question from the audience, and I really appreciate this one, because having gone on the delegation trip, I think there's sometimes a tendency, if you're from the United States, you don't really have an awareness of localized issues in some other countries. So I guess, Ambassador, for you, are there any domestic political issues in Mexico that Americans should pay attention to right now?
Well, Amy, they often said that the relationship is intermestic between Mexico and the United States, which means that the domestic agenda intertwines with the foreign agenda. So there are plenty of issues, I think, and vice versa. But in Mexico, I would point to perhaps two or three. One is certainly we're going to have a very important midterm election next year. It's going to be important in several ways. First of all, because it's going to be, all 32 states are having, at one level or another, some electoral process. There are 15, I think, or 14 governorships, plus the lower house of the lower house of Congress, the Cámara de Diputados, is going to be renewed completely, and that will determine whether the president has or not, his party has a majority there, and therefore can do a lot of reforms. So it's also, I think it'll tell us what the whether the opposition has, the political opposition, the parties like the PRI, the PAN, the PRD, have a chance of putting together a serious competition against the incumbent party in 2024. I think that's important. I think also that this election will let us know whether Morena, which is the president's party, can actually stand by itself without AMLO and without the president himself. I think most analysts point to the fact that it is the president's high acceptance rate that pulls Morena, not the other way around, up. And therefore, since he's not formally and officially in the ballot, that will give you some sense of what can happen with Morena as a party itself once the president finished his tenure. So I think that's one. It's an important topic. I would pay attention also. Certainly, I think it's important to pay attention to what happens on the economic front. I think that the Mexican economy, unfortunately, was not growing even before COVID came. We were, I think, certainly not having sufficient private investment to keep the economy going. It was only consumption that was pulling the economy by and large. I think that we need to create a better business climate in Mexico, a better climate for businesses, and I think that's an issue to watch. And maybe finally, I would just point. I think that this has always been the case when there's a change of government from one party to another. It happened when the PAN went, from the PRI to the PAN, and then from the PAN to the PRI, and then now today from the PRI to Morena. There's the tension between the federal and state level. You are seeing a sort of I would say a pretty strong rupture between a group of governors and the president, and to some extent that has largely always been there, those type of tension. But I think that in this case, we need to pay attention, because there's a lot of debate about how relationships between sort of the center and the periphery, the federal government, the state government, should take place, and how public money should be distributed between the levels of government, because Mexico has a very centralized tax system. And that's something that I would also put sort of in the watch list.
Okay, no, that's incredibly helpful, because especially your comment about how it's intertwined because of these domestic issues are affecting us so much, and will be interesting as we talk about this Neighbors series, how our neighbors are definitely impacted by decisions the United States will make about the COVID response, about the financial response to COVID. So these are all evolving things. And as you've seen, the Biden administration put together some names and faces, and certainly had some formal plans in their campaign that they discussed. Raul, you were on the campaign. I mean, so much was focused on, COVID and certainly the financial response, but do you think that there was conversations, especially, in some of the border states, about the foreign policy and how important this was to move forward and a possible change of leadership? I mean, was that a part of the conversation?
Oh, absolutely. Especially with Arizona being in play as much as it was, and the hopes that we were going to win Texas, which has one of the largest economies in the country, California, so on and so forth. So yes, they were definitely issues, New Mexico included. What are those foreign policies going to look like? How are they going to affect our economy locally in these states? So it was definitely something that played a role. But again, obviously, the one major issue that played a huge role was the whole immigration issue. That was number one on a lot of people's minds. Bless you.
Thank you.
There, yeah. So yeah, I mean, you couldn't ignore it because it was just so blatant. But I mean, there's again, it's about the economy. It goes back to that, and how are you going to provide jobs, especially now where we've lost so many jobs across the country, not just along the border states, but everywhere in both countries. And so that is definitely going to be something, I think, not only that was talked about during the campaign, but it will be definitely a policy issue that's going to have to be talked about rather, with all the parties involved in this relationship.
Right. And Raul, you touched on this, so I think it's important to spend a little time. Maybe we'll start with you, Ambassador. Could you speak a little bit about the future of migration policy? Certainly we saw in 2016, it was used as a very divisive issue in the campaign. There's definitely, this is one area where there's a lot of times a large policy switch between, different parties, different administrations. What do you think the future is for migration policy? I think you're on mute, sir.
Sorry, but I sneezed and didn't want that to happen again. So first of all, I think that there's going to be an immediate need to deal with something, which is what's going to happen in terms of our, the regional migration phenomenon coming from Central America through Mexico into the United States. The people that are waiting in Mexico as part of asylum claim cases. and everything that the migration protection protocols put in place. And that's sort of I think it's a very immediate challenge. There is every time there is people perceive that reform on immigration might take place in the United States, I think that the number of people trying to get into the United States increases, to be honest.
Mhm.
And you have also the fact that Central American countries, especially those on the Northern Triangle, were especially hit by hurricanes in the past month or so, and that's a challenge. And the solution, to be sure, it's always and has always been, work on the root causes of migration. So migration is not a forced decision, and that's absolutely right. But that is difficult, takes money, and it's medium to long term. So I think we're going to have to deal with that, and I think that the U.S. and Mexico have a shared vested interest in working together along with the Central Americans and other countries to try to address these phenomenon, and especially these sort of asylum and refugee situation. That's one. And I'm sure that the Biden team has this well in their, as part of the top list. And then I think bilaterally, Mexico is the United States' #1 trading partner. We are not the only, but one of the two bordering countries. We have so much at stake. We have complementary population dynamics. We're a younger society. We're not a deep as aging society as the U.S. So there's going to be movement of people both sides. There's actually estimated 2 million Americans that live in Mexico, also, that people don't often talk about that. Mm-hmm. So the question is, should we work on simple legal processes that allow people to move to the extent that's possible, legally between them and between our countries? And I think we should. And that doesn't mean by no means that is open borders. It's just saying, can we identify areas in which if we do have these legal avenues, people will pick them and reestablish circularity among in the migration pattern. And that is going to take into the discussion of the A2 visas, H2As, H2B visas, the so-called NAFTA or now USMCA visas, and what can we do to make sure that whatever migration place, it does happen legally, by all means. I mean, we're not condoning here illegality, and people should not come into the United States without papers. That's clear. But how do you do this? Because then we can actually spend time concentrating on what are the true threats to both countries, which are not, in my view, they're not, by and large, is not just the migrant crossing.
Yeah, no, that's huge. Raul, anything briefly to add? I think certainly the ambassador did a great summary of what we're looking at, but any thoughts, final thoughts?
Yeah, no, to the point, I think, with the, again, to the people that the Biden administration isn't putting into these positions, Ali Mayorkas is one of, person who has worked on these kinds of issues, during the Obama administration and would be ready to go day one. And I think that's what this administration is trying to do, is try to, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, Amy, is, we're trying, we have to be ready to January 21 to go. Yeah. And so I think, it's important for these countries, our countries rather, to work this out and get it figured out, because we need to. And I'll just say thank you again for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and it's been an honor to be here with all of you.
Well, thank the both of you. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Raul, for sharing your thoughts. I do think that I'm going to encourage to have a follow-up conversation as we see some of these things develop. I do want to encourage everyone that joined today. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. Certainly, good neighbors is a good subject. I was raised to know that your neighbors are certainly some of the most important relationships that you'll have. And so we're going to continue this series. If you're new to the American Council of Young Political Leaders or the US-Mexico Foundation, I encourage you to please go to their website, find out more. The storytelling they're doing for ACYPL all around the globe, what the US-Mexico Foundation is doing is so vitally important. Find out more. There's various ways you can get involved, and there's various ways you can also support both organizations, and I encourage you to do so. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you to our hosts. And we really appreciate the information that you shared. We wish all of you to be safe and also enjoy this holiday season as well coming up. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.